great show for us today. It's all about the hidden Prion economy. It's an economy, isn't it? Illicit and non-illicit sort of drugs make a lot of money, don't they? Especially they're made out of very simple compound, basically, like fentanyl. Where fentanyl was invented, you've really got the invention, and somebody's going to say, that's not patented, doesn't make any money, which it does. But it's really so dangerous. It's incredible. What's the reason to go to such a dangerous sort of compound? And now you've got fentanyl as well, which is 100 times more potent, isn't it? And it's just really dust, basic, isn't it? But fatal, because it shuts respiration of the cells down. ISO is another compound, which also is very small, similar, and it's a hell of a lot more potent, of course, than fentanyl is as well. Isn't it just like 2 grams of that? Micrograms, I think. That's right. 2 micrograms is a lethal dose. So you're looking at something that's so small. Could you say that any government, which the government is, we the people, yes? So do you define government as we the people because we the people is above the legislative assembly? Well, you should, because you're thinking about, the government being legitimate, and the government is we the people, not something out there. But what happens where you've got an organisation like WEF, for instance, and could anybody say that they haven't been skiting, that they have used their position to influence people to get into offices? And so could somebody sign a foreign agent's insurance and register and have an oath to we the people, and is that hanging behind the office? And what about an anti-bribery? Because aren't those things supposed to be something which is written and put and hanging behind the office? Because why? Well, because under the Constitution, those are all seats which should be open to everyone. And how could that be if you've got, people far away like that own the big Pfizer and those all that speak out where the WEF is, and they skite like crazy, but what they're saying is things which is completely opposite your Bill of Rights. And where does somebody get the position to do such, which you can hear out of their mouths as well, can't you? And that's a holder of a stake. It's like, what a bad word, what a disgusting, stupid situation. You've got a holder of a stake. Well, that must be far, 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 far below the government, shouldn't it be? Why? Well, because the government is we the people. Are you defining government correctly when you use the word government? And isn't it supposed to be that you can't have influenced positions? You'd have to say that you got there, but you got there because you were influenced and unfairly. And was that seat and that office open for everyone? You'd have to say no, obviously, because WEF has got caught ripping into everyone and letting you know that they're the ones that's in charge, and it's really these holders of the stake. They're called stakeholders. It's like a cliffhanger. But what you're occupying where a seat is in a government cannot be for rent. So is the anti-bribery form, behind the office? Is the foreign agent's insurance registration written out and on a placard that's behind the office as it's supposed to be under the Constitution? It has to be. So what happens where none of those bits of information exist anymore? Because why? Well, because you'd have to sign something, you'd be committing, sure, forgery and fraud, but somebody's committing forgery and fraud by saying that, the office was open for anybody and the best person to occupy that seat. Where is that the truth? Where the system is? Would you say that most of these nations have a lawful government and that the people where these seats are were lawfully put? And would you say that they are operating under the constitution where they're supposed to be? Because isn't that the contract? Or suddenly that contract has been discarded? And what would be the reason why someone has an alligator? You're an alligator. It's like, this is not an alligator, and it's got nothing to do with allegation. It's got nothing to do with allegation. What would be the reason why somebody would say it's an allegation? No, it's not. What we're just talking about is just straight up fact, something to be discovered, and where you've got three people and you've got a verification, good, and where you don't have that, do you, until it is. And so isn't that what's happened, like, for instance, in the Netherlands, where Gates and the other bloke that's involved more with the big Pfizer, it's been said that they made false claims. And would somebody say that where that wasn't a claim? What's the difference between a commie plaint and a claim? Seems to me like these people have a claim. It's not a commie plaint. And why would anybody just say something has existed there as a gation of an alley? An allegation. It's like, God help us. A gation of an alley is like something isn't proven yet, perhaps. But a claim could be something which isn't proven, but it is a claim. And so various private companies are involved, aren't they? And you're going to say that nobody has a single issue about how all that voting went on in the past, and all the switching that went on as to be how that vote would no longer be observed, to be seen, to be verified. So somebody can't say that's a gation of an alley. That would be ridiculous. They're completely wrong. That would be just like AI letting you know that a red blood cell exists, which it doesn't. And so can you keep using words like the gation of an alley, like allegation? It's like there's no such thing. I don't think that I'm into anything that's a gation of an alley whatsoever. An allegation. It's like, please, couldn't you rise to the level of actually lawfulness, or are you only just focused on what's a gal of a lee, which is a legal? It's like what's lawful can often not be what's a gal of a lee. If it's a gal of a lee, it could be not even a positive law. And so that's not a gation of an alley. That's really to do more with facts. That's it, finished. And wouldn't you say that various private companies that are owned by these holders of a stake, like what WEF has said, WEF spelt backward is the few. So why don't we just call them the few? Because it is the few. And mostly that comes out of their mouths has got nothing to do with what's lawful whatsoever, especially when, along with it, they all say, well, you're going to be eating cockroaches. Why would they say that you're going to be eating cockroaches? Because you're going to say that there's not an asymmetric warfare going on. Why isn't it that that's not something which is truly spoken about the most? And wouldn't you say that in history shows that you've got private concerns and that, often couldn't you say that this power that's existed hasn't determined things for its own self? So what would be the reason why the vast majority of people where the world is, the globe, can't stand the United Nations? Is that just like bypassed? And the idea that the United States Postal Service is owned by a private consortium. And isn't that a bloke who lives in Scotland? And, you've got this group that's not even national, engaged in the nation. And what would be the reason why something isn't a paper or something which is hard, a hard plate of something that did exist? And somebody's going to say that these machines weren't connected to the net when they were. And SIMS cards and things have been found in them. And too much information exists to show that something that was completely unpopular was made to be what was put over everyone. Somebody's going to say, oh, no, there was no demonstrations, and there isn't any demonstrations against the ridiculous conditions that government has placed over farmers and over everybody, basically. So is it that when you look into things, you could see that a truth exists about the Hammer program, where software is called like a scorecard, and that what's credible where evidence is? Does that exist? Yes or no? And what would be the reason why so much comes out that shows that something was certainly not correct where things are, you see? And so, where do you start where all that is anyway? Because what we've talked about in our program is how there's a difference between where you select someone and someone is selected versus elected. Do you know what the difference is between what is selected and elected? Elected is not something that you selected. No, not at all. It should be, though. It should be what you've selected. But how could it be if a private PAC gave massive amounts of money, and that sort of money could really be huge, matter of fact, and dwarf all the contributions that could be like monies that came from we the people? And isn't this exactly what's going on? And why would you just say, it for sure has occurred in quite a few nations, and so, oh, no, it hasn't occurred here? It's like, hasn't it? Isn't that the real question? So what's going to be keeping to go along with what's not popular, where you've got AI at the moment, and you've got all these logarithms which look into things and censor what's going on, and only giving you a half-truth where something is which is worse than a lie. And so too many other contextual findings exist that isn't letting investigation look into who and what is behind all of these very strong drugs. And you're going to say that the people that are dying from those compounds, that's recent more, isn't it? You're going to say that's not an asymmetric warfare. You're going to say that that's not made in the nation. You have to keep saying it's made by some foreign, faraway corporation, apparently, which, God help us, it's not. And so looking into where voting is itself and the political system, somebody's going to say that there isn't any reason to look into these things. It's like, who would say that? This is not anything that anyone that's popular around the world, most will tell you that things are rigged. And so somebody's going to say, oh, no, it's not rigged. It's all fine. It's like, no, it isn't. So in 2014 is a real example of how things start to become big lies, where a government is taken over like Ukraine, and you have the Maidan Revolution, and you're not going to say that big money wasn't behind the setup for the war that would go on. And aren't you just fed up with not really getting the other side and being able to hear what the other side has to say, and that you are able to express what the other side has to say about things? I mean, that's going to be a proper inquiry. And so where in 214 you've got an example also of the corpse where you've got the Centre for Disease Control, and people are going to say that this is not an organisation that's got a big swinging door, and that if you were in private business and you came from that and you came into a government regulatory role over those businesses, and when you finished with the CDC, you went back into the business, somebody's going to say that, hey, you know what, all the money that was given to the big Pfizer, yes, and they were one of the largest defence contractors suddenly. So how come suddenly all of this is under the military? And you've got military prototypes, as it was called, these injectables and things. And somebody's going to say, oh, wow, you know what? Trillions of dollars has just gone and we don't know where it's gone. It's like, yeah, so information and data is not buried, right? And how many crimes do you need? You keep like one crime is enough, honest. You don't need 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You should be able to stop just at one crime and investigate that, and that's it. And responsibility should come from it. So somebody's going to say that the definition of a vaccine has been redefined, or it hasn't been redefined. And so what's directly a connection to the higher deaths that's gone on ever since, and also the infertility, and also these turbo cancers and things. And also for a long time that's passed, people have said that these compounds which are injected aren't ecological. And how can you support something which is not ecological? So it's just that the media, which is very biased, unbelievable, always only is looking at a bus driver, for instance, and the highest level they ever go to, basically, is to talk about the bus driver and the people who worked on the bus. It's like, yeah, but like the bus driver got paid by someone, didn't they? And how come you're just stopping at the bus driver? That's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's just redacted of where truth is. So who said glyphosate was safe? And who said that these compounds that was injected was for something which was apparently contagious, where no claim exists for that? So where someone is, been really saying mRNA is fine and safe, how come they don't show up then with the claim to show that that's so? Well, they didn't show up because they were asked to in the Netherlands. And so what's upheld where the day is, and what is it that where you're finding a toxin, and that toxin has compromised the body to harm. And so it can be said, like some people right out there right now, salespeople saying, oh, glyphosate is fine. And they got their information from the company that they work for, but somebody owns that company. Somebody privately owns, like a holder of a stake. And glyphosate concentrate, somebody's going to say, God help us, we don't ever find that in the tissue. 90% of Americans aren't showing that in their urine to show, God help us, you've just got a recent, dose of that. What's the reason why golfers can suffer? They're pretty much the same as agricultural workers. And what's the reason why it's said that how far away from the golf course do you live? Because if you're within 5 miles of it, it's probable that you're going to have some glyphosate concentrate. And the closer that you live toward the golf course, the more likely it is that you have glyphosate. And so is glyphosate supposed to be in the body, yes or no? And, right where Roundup was given to everyone and put to be for sale, too many people back then said that glyphosate and all these toxins are going to wipe out the environment and cause people to be sick. And somebody's going to say, oh, no, that hasn't occurred. It's like, that is exactly the things which has occurred. So how long does time have to pass? Like, for instance, it's been known for a long, long while that fluoride is really toxic, aluminium fluoride. And you've got that in the water. And you've got various nations that said, we do not want to be medicated against our consent. And so, that was taken out of their water. And you've got countries which have such a low, birth survival. And how many nations have a better birth survival than the United States has in America here, which we're pretty low on the list. And is it that a lot more money is spent apparently, but is that going toward better health? It doesn't seem to be, because you've got, where are we on that list of those that could be survived where birth is? And is somebody going to say, you know what, turbo cancers, which never was seen like before, but all of these embalmers and people, because they got rid of the other verifiedness about how you would have died. And what's the reason for all of that to be changed suddenly before 2020? You don't think that that's all set up by the holders of a stake, which the holders of a stake as a stakeholder is definitely not government. It isn't. Or you could say fascism is the type of government that you have, but that's like, where's the we the people where that is? So if $38 trillion is owed and 122% it is at the moment of the gross domestic product. And so is it that just everybody just is paying into an interest, and the holders of the stake are the ones that make out like bandits from all the interest, and now the principal can't be paid anymore? And so somebody's going to say, oh, no, that's not what's gone on. These big corps like nations haven't got other little nations to be so in debt, and they organise things that they be so come into debt, matter of fact, that they've got to say, oh, now you have to give us a port, or you've got to give us something. And that is the overall, project which has gone on. And so it's a whole budget that's given for defence, but you've got people on the street, and what's spent for them. It costs less to give these people a home than it costs us as a society not to give them a home. And why should we live in a world where you've got so many homeless people? And why should we live in a world where rent and the cost of a house as a commodity soared far more than any other commodity? What's the reason for that? And what's the reason for so many empty houses all over the place? And what's the reason for all these second homes which are empty all over the place? And what's the reason why nobody, can sell their house at the moment? Why? Who wants to be enslaved for 50 years when in the 60s it only took you 3 years to pay for your house? Are you getting the picture? Who did that? The bankers did that. And is the bankers the government? No, it isn't, but it should be. Economy and currency should be tied to governance. Where it's not, it's going to run amok, isn't it? And this is the reason behind the arm and dot arm. But what was Project Artichoke? Have you looked into Project Artichoke? Was a Project Artichoke not funded by a criminal banking cartel of a one world order, funded and projected and programmed so that you've got these Manchurian murderers? And what's the private consortium that suddenly gets a Goldfinger to come along? Goldfinger. And you've got Lone Rangers here in other nations, and you've got Goldfinger in other nations as well. And Goldfinger provides funding, but the funding really is to create polarization. And Goldfinger, you're going to say, oh no, there was no Goldfinger. Goldfinger never bought up all the DA offices where the criminal justice system is and corrupted that outright. I mean, you're going to say that that's not the case? It's like, it sure is the case. And and what about where criminal justice is? People are going to say there isn't a secret organisation like the Sons of May and all the others, like the Elks and everything else, which is the same as the Sons of May. And people are going to say, oh no, there's no May Sons, and that's not a secret organisation, but it's a certain fraternised organisation. And what would be the reason why you've got this group, just like you've got these gilded ones, and everybody, all of them are running around with a double oath? You can't have a double oath in the nation, honest. What's the next drug, more or less, that's a payout that's so dangerous? And isn't it all of that just a chance that most are going to end up with some challenge that's going on, and that leads to ever more dementia? And what the verdict is really, that's much easier for you to walk where a court is, and are you the prosecutor where this is? Or are you on the other end of something as a deaf-ended ant? Or no, you're still on the other end of it because you're a tiff of a plaint. So a deaf-ended ant is not a good position to be in, and certainly a tiff of a plaint isn't either. Because if it's just a whinging, whining hag, which is what plain tiff means in French, and wasn't it the French that actually were given everything like to write the code that everybody's under here? How come you don't know the history and who was behind all of the code and how that gets written? So if you're just left as an infant decedent, as a deaf-ended ant or as a tiff of a plaint, these are not proper wordedness where anything is. But certainly you could be the prosecutor where you are to prosecute your claim, and everybody else could be some wrongdoers. So isn't this like what's happened where suddenly you've got euthanasia in America and all the other nations, and isn't this just similar to some sort of death count? And what's going on where no consent is for MAID? Why don't you look into MAID, medical assisted institutionalized death? So is that the use of lights where a police vehicle is, but no crime incident is? And is that a safety stop? Or is it a crime to use all the lights and siren and everything, and it's really not a safety stop? It actually is commercial, making money from you. And isn't this an incident to a felony? Of course, where somebody gets pulled over for a traffic stop, isn't that a felony crime that's committed where the lights and siren is all used, where it really wasn't a safety stop because no reasonably articulated suspicion of any crime could be existed where someone is? And who is there doing that against you and I? Is everyone under oath, which they should be, to you, to be cared and to be protecting of you and to protect your right? And isn't it that you're supposed to be considered innocent until proven something else is the case? What happens when it's not considered that you're innocent? And that some committed felony is because no information existed where anything was, and somebody participated in commerce instead, and who is there on the other end of that just is getting fried. Somebody's going to say these things don't exist. It's like, yes, they do. They sure do. And all of this needs to be looked into. You need Article 3 and Article 4 courts, which sit above the Legislative Assembly, so that you can make law to help protect, everybody. So if somebody had staphylococcus, life colloid, and that is living outside of the skin, but you're using a lot of soap, you're using a lot of these perfumes, which is synthetic, and we're going to say that the life colloid in your skin is going to still be survived, where it's not, and where you use a lot of detergent and synthetic fragrance and things, the blood is drinking that. So who's that synthetic fragrance for? Is that for everybody around you, apparently? And what gives somebody the right to just be spraying themselves with these synthetic perfumes that everybody else's blood is just drinking that? And somebody's going to say, well, we got a lot of this soap, and we're really washing all our dishes with this soap. But have you seen the studies that show that most of these dishes have all got soap still on it? And it's just causing gaps in your intestine as a residue? And isn't that really not actually washed off? And you've got a lot of soap residue on most things, and it's the cause of leaky gut. Somebody's going to say, oh, you didn't ever hear about this. Oh, well. Solvents and detergents alongside all these other forever molecule. What do you mean about a forever molecule? A molecule like Teflon, which can't be broken down, and it's found its way into most life. And you've got 4 molecules like that, and you've got pretty much one group behind this that's made all of these molecules. So is it okay that those are companies that just continue to exist because we're not sure if we could make anything else except put Teflon into these, gaskets and everything that's made because we want to make rockets and things, and we need that in the gasket because we don't know anything else that we could use because most other things are going to get dissolved. And so, we better keep these companies in business because we're in an industrial military complex. And this is really a problem because, honest to God, that's where the buck ends, doesn't it? And molecules that negatively impact the gut flora You're going to say that these are not observed, and there is no literature that supports any of this. It's like, yes, there is. Detergent and the body product, of course, where toothpaste is, containing very harsh chemicals, and on the packet it says, keep this away from children. You've got chemicals like alcohol, ethoxylate, and surfactant, and these damage the mouth and the gut and the skin lining and things, and it reduces the life colloid terrain. So you could see such life colloid as the protozoic types of life colloid diversity, which is supposed to have in your intestine, fall to be as barren as like a moonscape, and altered where versatility is. And you're going to say, no, this is fine. Go ahead and have your antibiotic. Because why? Well, because it's going to just wipe out everything in your intestine. And who is it where that is letting you know the importance of the life colloid in your intestine? You see, there's such contradictory stuff that's going on. It's incredible. And there's such huge room for all improvement. But the damage to your gut, brain, and blood barrier is by these chemicals, and especially seen, of course, as you've got these alcohol ethoxylate, where rinse aids are, for instance, and it's shown clearly to harm considerably, and it's not in a mild way. No, it's really seen as absolute harmful, injurious, and damage and costing to you. So where it's seen, of course, you've got intestinal lining, you've got this epithelial barrier, and that's just gone on to have an increased permeability, allowing other molecule and forever molecule to escape from the intestine and go right into the body and be an unwanted substance that passes right through that leaky gut. How come you went into some circumstance to absolutely get healed up and you weren't given a test to see if you have a leaky gut, like a zonulin test, for instance? These are pretty cheap, and why should it not be that you should know if you have a leaky gut or not? So if you reduce the beneficial nutrient where it's seen and you've got a reduced life colloid diversity, why? Well, because you've got a lot of solvent, surfactant, and synthetic fragrance, and everything leads to a lower important short-chain fatty acids. These short-chain fatty acids are what really nourishes the gut cell and reduces inflammation, and you've got life colloid that produce enzymes to break mucin down, and somebody's going to say you're going to be fine when you don't have that enzyme, so mucin is just going to be where you're not, and it's directly the cause of most disease, matter of fact. So what product really is seen to irritate, and if you put it in your eyes, it sort of burns. If you put it on your face, it ends up causing clogged pores and inflammation, and the cause of absorption, even small amounts of certain compounds where the cleansing agents are where that is. And somebody's going to say, that's not the cause of a serious breathing or stomach challenge. That's not the cause of an irritable bowel syndrome. That's not the cause of all the problems where caustic conditions are to the mouth, the throat, and the esophagus, and the stomach, and the pancreas, and Brunner gland. When you talk to anybody, do you know the importance of the Brunner gland? Do you know how enzymes are transported? Do you know how blood is formed? Do you know even what menstruation is? You see, it's really the Brunner gland, of course, is one of the largest organs in the body, and you've got substances which is produced there, and unless you've got pancreatic function and proper Brunner gland, how are you going to survive? Where these are the organs that truly is above everything else. These organs are above your brain. These organs are above the heart. The heart and the brain are far lower down than the Brunner gland and the endothelial glands that's there where your pancreas is. And these are organs which have to function because you need endothelial growth factor to help protect endothelial cells. which line all the passageways internal of the body. And so when you look at the eyes, where somebody is just chowing down on beans and sprouted beans and these sorts of things, most of these people are bubble-gutted, yes. They are very nasally, yeah, real nasal in their voice, and their tissue around their eyes has shrunk. And you can see what they're doing, chowing down on beans, mung beans, Suzuki beans, whether they're sprouted or not. It's just a horror. Why? Because it's got way too much phosphate, and you can look and see, here's somebody who's got the habit of that, and they look like death warmed up. Why? Because the tissue around their eyes is just shrunken. And so why don't we look behind the curtain, honest? I think everybody really is. And most people are just like mistaken that they might have some audience. But you're just looking like you've really got tissue that's shrunk around your eyes and what have you. But you're letting people know that you should eat exactly the way that you're eating. But you're not surviving yourself from what you eat. And so the acidic food and the dead food, of course, like bean and flesh, all of it has prion. And prion is like molecules which are proteinaceous-like, but they cause misfolding of other protein where that's in the body. And so various membranes that's partitioned, for instance, like where vegetable root is, like manioc and taro, and then you've got a peduncle. So is that a nut? No, it's not. It's not a nut. Is it a seed? No, it's not a seed. But it's like a nut. It's like a seed, but it's not a seed and it's not a nut. So your cashew is not a nut, not a seed. It's called a peduncle, all right? You need to know what. And is the peduncle fine for you to consume? It's got such serious acid in it, and it really does interfere. It's like bushes which you brush by them. It's going to cause rashes all over your body. And so cashew's got all these compounds that's in it. And somebody's going to say, oh, no, when you eat a lot of that, and some people just ate a fortune amount of that because they put it into everything. And then did any of these people end up with cancer of the colon and also cancer in the lungs and things? Yes, they have. And you're going to say that it wasn't the peduncle and it wasn't all the, acid-forming food that you consumed, especially the high phosphate food. And so all that's seen really is a cause of neoplastic addition. You could see that it's a combination of these acid phosphate food where you've got bean eaten and you've got all those beans sprouted, and it's just a dead food because it impairs. And then you've got lentil and mung beans sprouted and these things, and all altering the terrain by particulate that can't be cleared away. And it's excessive in its phosphate in relation to calcium. And so it's seen to be shrunken Harderian glands, like the glands around your eyes. So I'd like to ask anyone in food, did you model what you're doing because you looked at mother's milk? Put your hand up if you did. Now, I'm in big audiences. I never saw a single person put their hand up. Why? Because it's true. If I said, hey, what's in mother's milk? What's the difference between our species and other species? Most people aren't going to be able to tell you. It's like, wow, that's really scientific, isn't it? So just like me, I was, what would you say, cut out of things because I could tell you that because of somatotyping that we're more frugivores where we are, and people hated that, hated. Why? Because they never studied a day of botany in their life and they have no idea what the definition of a fruit is. They have no idea that a cucumber, a cauliflower, a cabbage, a Brussels sprout, a tomato, is actually a fruit, and that a Brazil nut is actually a fruit. So, to get retaliated against, I could remember back some 20 years ago, there was an event in Sedona, and I was royally retaliated against. And it wasn't because of, I guess that some people said, oh, no, we hate anybody who says we're frugivores. And all these people speaking, I'd ask them, what's the definition of a fruit? Put up your hand if you can tell me. No one would put up their hand because, honest to God, they never had investigated that. And so, it's just like sexual mutilation, which was something else which I was talking about at the time. And I think that some people heard me say that about sexual mutilation, and they were just disgusted that I had said anything like this. So he must be someone we must really retaliate against, and they did. They blocked and stopped me from having any care to belong to the group anymore, and that was the war fooders, or the raw fooders, which is war spelt backward. And so those are people who would just continue on washing all their plates and everything, just putting piles of soap on everything and telling everyone just to go ahead and chow down on beans and be a starchaholic and a carbitarian. But where food is really stored, where kitchen utensils are, and definite is that you've got toxic residue left behind where soap is, and you've got lots of surface where plates are and utensils and things. And always it's not, never not, but where those dishes are all looked at once they're cleaned and things, everybody can find residue of the soap still left on that. And so is that really safe? Yes? So the idea that you've got material that can't be really broken down properly, but is going to really affect the body, and prion like protein where the taro is, prion like protein where the cashew is, and partition where that's not water soluble, and it's very enzyme resistant, and so it can't be really broken down properly. And somebody's going to say that is not the cause of neoplasm, which it sure is. It adds to all of this. It compromises your body. It blocks and stops your immune system from functioning properly. So all of this is linked to a cognitive decline, and it involves these amyloid beta and tau protein, and they all act like prion does, and it causes a misfolding of protein where the body is. So you could see the spreading of all of that nerve ganglion and pathology, which otherwise is within the brain and tissue where nerve ending is. And so prion from cashew and prion where taro is, and all of this, which has got a bit of a shared mechanism. So prion protein, the role of that is what you could see going on, and that's causing a amyloid buildup where the brain is. And so it creates dementia, Alzheimer's, and these sorts of conditions. And it's all set about by that particulate being very fine and completely so easy able to cross the blood-brain barrier where it shouldn't. Why? Well, because you've got leaky gut also, because you've got soap residue and all sorts of things on the dishes and stuff that you're consuming, or it's full of plastic. So that's another thing that I would see. I would see all of these events, and everybody would be just doing what they could to chow down on, plates and things which would just leak plastic into the body. And so, is that the reason for dementia and a loss of balance and things like that, where Parkinson's is and what have you? And Alzheimer's is a bit complex, but you could really see that tissue that's not kept vital where the terrain is. And why? Well, because you've got molecule which is enzyme resistant. What does that mean? It means it can't be broken down. So it directly really becomes a condition that is toxic. And somebody will say, oh, that's an infection. It's a toxin, and it's a loss of proper conditioning. So you have inflammation where that is. Somebody can say, that's an infection, that's an infection. It's not. It's your body slowly breaking down because your terrain isn't right. So you've got misfolded protein, and that causes these Lewy bodies, and then plaque formation where the brain is. And if you're looking into what's traditional, you've got prion disease, and you've got animal molecular surfactant, like in glyconeuramic acid, which is similar to our own body surfactant, but it's not the same as your body surfactant. Molecules are different, and we don't have any DNA in our body to be able to break down in glyconeuramic acid, which comes from flesh, which just is an example that we're talking about here. And so somebody's going to say that molecular surfactant doesn't attach itself to sphingosine to become a surfactant, which it does, and then it interferes with polymerization process of the aggregation and fusion and differentiation of life colloid into the things that you're actually supposed to have. And so double prion disorders are studies which is starting to suggest the role where that all is in Alzheimer's. And you've got this double prion disorder because you've got both alpha and beta tau protein that exhibit these prion-like properties. And somebody's going to say, that is not the cause of this pathology. It sure is, straight up. You've got amyloid beta protein forming plaque from all the flesh and all the bean and things which really counts just for dead food. So you've got these alpha and beta and tangles of tau, and these are the very things that you find in Alzheimer's disease, and it really behaves all like prion disease, which really is seen that is being induced more from induces normal protein in our body to be misfolded. And you've got an aggregation, fusion, and differentiation of a polymerization of that protein, and that spreads more the condition through the body. And somebody's going to say, oh, there's no gain of function where that is. It's like, it sure is. What's an antibody? You're going to say that that's not a gain of function, that you ended up with an antibody? And the nervous system is a very clear example of where the tissue, which is looking, go ahead and just look at the Harderian glands, which is the tissue around your eyes. And if it's shrunken around your eyes, you certainly have this condition. So can the body heal up from that? Yes, it can. It can heal up from lots of conditions. Matter of fact, have you ever heard somebody can heal from a brain disease? Have you ever heard that somebody can heal from a pancreatic disease? Have you ever heard that somebody can heal from a liver disease? Have you ever heard that somebody can heal your bone without all these plates? Have you ever heard that your eyes can heal up? Have you ever heard that your teeth can heal up? And certainly your kidneys can heal up. So brain disease and all these diseases is leaky gut. And you're going to say, oh, that's not been shown, where it sure is. And if you've got Harderian glands, like we're talking about the organs that surround your eyes, have a look in the mirror and see if you've got tissue there. If you don't, it means that you've got Harderian gland stress. And it's a typical thing that somebody has that condition. They've got a lot of nasal mucus, and the voice, you can hear that. And it's a general experience where pain is existed, where the stomach isn't able to empty properly into the intestine, but it's held up more because somatostatin is raised. It shuts your stomach down. Why? Because you had heavy protein and fats and complex carbs, which is all enzyme resistant. And you're going to say that that's not the reason for this distension of your stomach and the gaining of many kilos of weight or pounds of weight after eating, or you come to a state now where you've gone into a cachexic state and the body's just wasting away. So we're learning and what's inflaming and what's seen to be a distension and what's felt to be discomfort after you eat. These are all your body signs that something should be corrected. So what's the slow determination of linkages where your nerve tissue is and these forever molecules, which is not easy to break down. Now you've got lacked lymph channels. These are the channels that cleanse your brain. And can that not be seen to be the cause of neoplasm? And the same condition where lung bronchial tissue is all full of stone, the pancreas is full of stone, the muscle is full of stone, the colon is, and brain tissue. So just talking about this being infectious is really missing the bus, because it's inflammatory. Nobody's going to say that polymerization isn't going on and gain of function isn't going on, and that you've got Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, where you've got little holes where the brain is, and you can't say that these prion-like molecules don't continuously cause protein to be misfolded, and it's a slow cell death templating which is going on where the brain is. And what are the very substances that break these substances down? You have to have a molecule which could be brought into your lymphatic cells, which can trigger, when that's released, 1 to 4 volts of energy to be able to break things down properly. So it's a rapid condition otherwise, and you've really got Creutzfeldt-Jakob types of disease, and you've got prion conditions which affect neurology. And today, of course, iatrogenic condition and medication and things which has been given can have a lot of these sort of prion-like molecules in it. So Alzheimer's disease originates more where you've got prion-like misfoldedness and a seeded aggregation of these alpha and beta, tau protein and things, and the leftover material in the brain. And so you've really got rare brain disorders, and you've got all of this leading to a greater sense of dementia, which these are the things which is going on, isn't it? And it belongs to more a group where we are and animals, and it's certain that it's known as prion disorders, like symptoms of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is really similar to Alzheimer's disease. So disease, the indigenous Chamorro people had an unusual high incidence, for instance, of these amyotrophic sorts of lateral sclerosis and Parkinsonism and dementia complex, and the toxins which they consume, which is linked to these cyanide-like molecules, which is within the food and everything. And you could see that animals which ate that, like the fruit bats, and then, who's eating the fruit bats? Yeah, and what the fruit bats eat, and the seeds and these cycase, micronisca palm, which contains these neurotoxins, this BMAA, which is a taro where it's eaten and is linked to the cause of this disease. And you've got lots of partition molecule in all of that, and very enzyme-resistant element. And so, you've really got toxins that are coming in and that neurodegenerative conditions. And so, we've just been talking a little about the people where the Guam is and Solomon Islands are, and these are particular areas where you've got a very high consumption of these cycad sort of product, which is very relevant here to our discussion, because you've really got a similar environmental condition where you've got cyanobacteria that produce this BMAA, which is life colloid magnified where the food chain is, and through these cycad seeds. And so you've got neurological links that are investigated and potential triggers where these are substances which are neurodegenerative. And so life colloid is magnified where certain foods are grown and contaminated with these cyanide-like molecule, and life colloid where it's found, and the fruits grown in that soil all have a lot of that, an algae which, like the taro that's grown in that contaminated soil, and cashew, very much of the similar sorts of growing conditions, and all of this really is this algae, cyanide, life, colloid, and microorganisms that contain this toxin, and it's remediated by plant root and things, but consumed then by smaller organisms like zooplankton. And then when food is eaten where all this has been influenced by such, you've got people then chowing down on the fish and shellfish and concentrating that toxin more. So you've got a bioaccumulation where the food chain is, and where aquatic plants filter feeding mollusks and fish and livestock, and this poses a potential risk for all of us. It's the bioaccumulation of this concentration where the organisms are, and plant and roots and fruit is, and even the palm tree fruits. So the Chamorros people who die of this that amyotrophic sort of lateral sclerosis, Parkinsonism, and dementia complex, and neurodegenerative diseases, which is really clustered in Guam, in the Solomon Islands, and it's similar to this amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's disease. And so you've really got these diseased brains, where if you're living in Guam, isn't that because of the food, like what we're talking about, and cellular assays? Anyway, other specialists and authors all demonstrate that where donor brain extracts are that contain these tau, alpha beta prion, and where molecule prototype is distinct, prions found where Alzheimer's disease is, and where people consume those foods, they end up with a similar disease. So the importance of these findings really extend well beyond the mechanism that's implicated. And like Guam, you've got this neurodegenerative disease, and where people become educated about that, they're not going to be passing away as much, are they? And so how much does it have to do more where you've got a leaky gut and that hasn't been determined? What's the reason why galadium, heavy metal, might be as a contaminant? And what about if glyphosate is used and these forever molecules are found? But you do find all of this in these amyloid plaque disruption. So if the gain of function is like antibodies are made, that's a gain of function. It's found where synthetic markers are, and biologics that's being used. So what if no one got a second opinion? So in Guam's traditional diet, you've got to focus on marine sources like fish and shellfish, and land crops like taro and yams, and breadfruit and bananas and coconut. And there's plenty of room for prion, like molecule where the cyanide contamination is. So Brazilians are a group, of course, that consume the entire cashew fruit. Okay, most of the fruit is fine, but certainly it's penduckleism. And so, it takes a lot. It's got to go through an acid bath. It's got to go through things that will soften it and this sort of thing to eat the penduckle. But it's if that's a staple food, like manioc is in cassava and yucca, it really is a fundamental condition where cuisine dishes are like pão de queijo, which is a cheese bread, and farofa, which is a toasted flour. And beriberi is a form of a thiamine deficiency, which is B1 deficiency, that causes nerve damage and peripheral neuropathy and other issues. So a healthy effectiveness is going on where indigenous communities are in the Amazon, like the Roraima and the Tocotinans and the Mahana, where it's really due to food not really being properly secure, but a deep insecurity where food is. So highly processed foods that's consumed in institutionalized food, where enzyme-resistant material is like flesh, and thiamine and B1 deficiencies and beriberi is still significant in our modern health. And so hiding in plain sight due to sort of vague symptoms like, oh, I got a bit of fatigue, I feel a bit irritable or confused, but it's really mimicking other conditions that affect the populations. It's really reliant upon food stuff, which really is pretty toxic and not too good for you. So it takes out B1. And what else does? People who have very high alcohol intake and malabsorption from drugs, stopping absorption, where hospital care centres are. So it's what's going on where you've got an increased metabolic demand that really impacts energy and nerve and heart and brain energy and function. So it's this, and then who's going to say that nanobots are not what everyone is talking about and all the patents, and that this is not something that's going on where it sure is. But, you could look to see how boron as an element is so important to help detox and things. And today we've been talking a little bit about the assumptions where health, law, governance, and institutional power is. And our next podcast really goes more deeper into the structure that beneath identity itself. We're going to be talking a little bit about birth certificates and marriage licenses and title conversion and trust and where military authority is and where's the limits on discretion where this is, and what about money mechanics and surveillance, you see. So injectables where property rights are and the architecture more of control, could this be examined? It's supposed to and should be, it has to be, and knowingly more negotiated. So how debt is and corporate structures intersect, you see where all this personal status is, and modern systems are operating, where your public servants are and private interest. Anyway, if you really want more of a breakdown, more and where the source trail is, comment more below and use the word title, of course, because below this you've got an access to extended materials and be notified more when the next episode drops. Anyway, hope you're having a really great day as you've been listening to this and look forward to catching on to it in a future show. Love you guys.